Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. We have a nurse here who recently went viral on TikTok after venting how her and her family are living paycheck to paycheck in Biden's economy. And I just might say some things that you don't like in this episode. But before we jump into any of that, hit that like and subscribe button. Leave us a short, sweet comment down below. Share this thing with your friends and family all over social media. Without further ado, let's roll it.
Kenzie Moan's video has hit over 1.5 million views, and she joins us now. Mackenzie, welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning. Clearly, your story is hitting a nerve. You're not alone. 1.5 million views. It's gone viral. But why did you decide to post this on TikTok?
I didn't really have any intentions when I posted the video. I had maybe 5 videos that I had posted to TikTok prior to that, and I just needed to vent in the moment. I needed to vent to my phone and just, I guess, get the words out of my brain with all the stress that I was feeling. And I had maybe 30 followers before I posted that video, and I didn't ever intend for it to spread as much as it did.
Right. And I was reading your story, and I think it's really important for people to know you're a nurse. Your husband's a security guard. He works as a personal trainer as well. And you both on the once a week clean an office building. So between you have 4 jobs. And I guess for a lot of people, they're like, wow, this is what America's like right now. Obviously, people relate to this. What kind of feedback are you getting from this?
As somebody that teaches personal finance, and that does not mean I know everything, but even as a career in public accounting, doing people's taxes, you would hear of situations like this. And when I hear that somebody's working 2 extra jobs outside of their normal full-time job, and they're still struggling to make ends meet, meaning they're living paycheck to paycheck, very rarely is it the fault of, say, the president, whether that's Donald Trump or Joe Biden, or the economy. There definitely is some blame to be had there. But a lot of times it is the personal finance side of things, meaning the individual decision making that a couple is making in terms of their finances. And so when I hear things like this, I'm already having red flags go up going, how did we get here? How are you working 2 extra jobs, but you're still living paycheck to paycheck, which 8 in 10 Americans are, to be in this state that you're in? So let's hear some more unraveling here from this nurse. I'm not putting the blame on her. Again, I don't know any of her personal finances. I'm just raising questions of things are already sounding a little off to me when you're working 2 extra jobs, but you're still struggling.
The majority of it, Rachel, has been positive, and other brave women and men sharing their struggles that they experience in their day-to-day lives. There has been some criticism, of course, but that kind of comes with the internet. I'm just glad that my voice was unintentionally, empowering to people to speak out and say, me too, and, share that we're all in the same situation with the economy and the price of groceries and gas and just the struggle of middle-class America, where we're working our butts off and we feel like we have nothing to show for it.
Yeah, I do want to highlight the chart that they have here with inflation on common items like groceries up 20%, electricity, gas, fuel and heating and oil. I mean, there is, without a doubt, obviously an increase in consumer products. But again, the question is that, what were the sequence of decisions that led to this happening? Because even though inflation is going up, people are making more money. But when you have these types of consumer goods or even services going up in price, the question is that where are you cutting somewhere else in your budget? Are you even budgeting in the first place? And for those that are going, well, Brad, it's easy for you to say you're not working multiple jobs. I do work about 2 or 3 jobs outside of my normal job that I do. I'm not living paycheck to paycheck, thank God. But I also do budget. I also have a budgeting app. I have goals. I don't have any debt. My question is that do they have debt? Is their mortgage 25% of their take-home pay? There's a lot of questions to be had here. What are you buying at the grocery store? I was literally at the grocery store about an hour before filming this, and I was just sitting back going, I'm seeing people buying soda. They're buying multiple bags of chips. They're not buying essential items. They're buying a ton of junk food. And if you were to cut out just the junk food from your grocery bill alone, I'm sure that would ultimately fill the gap of electricity bill or even the differential in gas. So it's tough to say, but people make bad decisions even when they're in times of need in terms of inflation going through the roof right now under Biden's economy. And I can't emphasize this enough. He is definitely one to blame, but some of the blame does have to be put on oneself for the decision making that's taking place here. And there's going to be a lot of questions that I'm going to propose that are going to go unanswered in this video.
You know, has your family always struggled, or is this sort of a recent thing that you're seeing inflation going up, the cost of groceries, the cost of gas? What is something changed or shifted over the last 3 years?
I'm sorry, you really broke up during your question.
Has your family always been struggling, or is this sort of a recent occurrence, maybe over the last 2-3 years?
Well, certainly, while I was in nursing school, you know, things were absolutely tight. But that being said, we weren't in a position where we were worried about how we were going to put food on the table. And that's because of my lower income during school. I was just cleaning the office building and my husband was working. So, you know, we were able to get some help along the way. However, now that that help's gone, it's just, you know, a lot of the expense is exponentially increased from what it was.
I could be wrong. Again, she's being very, very generic here, but it sounds like there was some sort of maybe governmental assistance that was taking place because of their low income level, whether that's food stamps or, you know, whatever the assistance was coming through, or maybe that was even a family member or an organization helping out. But again, by her going to nursing school, I'm assuming, and I could be wrong here, that there's probably a lot of student loan debt that's being placed on this family right now. And if you're in any sort of debt, that could absolutely cripple you and ultimately hinder you from getting ahead in life. Furthermore, I'd be curious, if there is debt, is it a fixed loan? Is it a variable loan? Because if it's a variable loan, right now under Biden's economy, that sucker probably went right through the roof. Furthermore, again, my question is, are you renting? What percentage of your mortgage is your take-home pay? Because you could have put yourself in a financial disaster or a very bad situation by taking out a mortgage that you should have never taken out in the first place. Did you put 20% down or did you put 3% down? What happened before all this took place is the biggest question we need to ask, because it's always easier to blame some nameless, faceless, shadowy figure out there than it is to blame oneself. If we're going to complain that Joe Biden blamed Xi Jinping or Putin for the Putin's price hike when gas prices increased, then we can't pull that same thing. If we're going to blame him for doing that, then we need to blame ourselves for doing the exact same thing. A lot of times when it comes down to our personal finance, it is placed on us for making certain decisions in the past that affected us in the future. I know people don't want to hear that. Very rarely does somebody want to hear, hey, it's ultimately your fault for putting yourself in a specific situation. But at majority of the time, that's what we see as accountants or even giving people financial coaching or financial advice. A lot of the times it was a sequence or a series of bad decision making that led them to where they're at right now. Not fun to hear. It's not fun to say. We've all been there, including myself. But, you know, that's just the reality of it.
And certainly, I mean, you know, prior to COVID, I was working as a correctional officer at one of the state prisons, and we did not struggle as much as we do now. And I make more than I did then now.
Yeah.
So
I don't think you're alone in that feeling, that I'm working harder.
So people go, well, how do you explain that one, Brad? Again, that depends. When was there a career shift? Were you in debt before that? Did you have a mortgage before that? Did you have kids before that? There's a lot of questions that are really going unanswered here in terms of why somebody's where they are. Again, she could be doing everything absolutely right, and they're just living paycheck to paycheck because of the increase in gas prices. Maybe the husband's driving a lot. Maybe she has to commute to work really far. Maybe they are just buying essentials at the grocery store, and it's just so crazy there in Pennsylvania where that increase of 30, 40%, whatever it may be, is reflecting that differential that they're having in their income. But it's raising even more questions now that the fact that you're making more as a nurse than you were as a correctional officer, and you weren't living paycheck to paycheck then, but now you are living paycheck to paycheck now. That differential in income gap doesn't make sense to me in terms of just the increase in consumer goods and services that we're seeing under Biden's economy.
I'm making more, but it's harder to make ends meet. Really quick, because I don't have a lot of time, but I want to ask you this question. What would be your message to our leaders out there about what you and so many of the people who have responded to you are feeling? What can they do to change the situation?
I think it's really a matter of, putting your boots to the ground and, making the money, bringing in the income as much as we possibly can. I don't know what we can do on an individual basis aside from, pay attention to the economy. In that video, I mentioned that I didn't want to hear about politics in the comments. And that's not to say that I'm not involved in politics. And I certainly, cast my vote and have my opinion about the economy. But I just don't discuss it publicly because it is such a hot topic. So I feel like people just really need to educate themselves.
I'm curious if she voted for Joe Biden and that's why she doesn't want politics involved, because people are just going to say, well, you got what you voted for. And I don't necessarily think that is fair across the board. There is definitely some truth to that on many fronts with Joe Biden. But if you notice there was very little reflection in terms of, well, we don't know what we could do on an individual level. There's a lot that you could do on an individual level. Again, you need to sit down and do a monthly budget. This means every month you are creating a new budget for yourself on paper. And that doesn't mean you cut corners with it, but every month you need to figure out, hey, if we're living paycheck to paycheck, what are we doing on a personal level that it's putting us in this position? And maybe it's nothing, but if you're buying a bunch of junk food for your kids at the store yourself, you're spending a lot of money on, cereal alone. If you buy 2 boxes of cereal every time you go to the grocery store, and let's face it, cereal goes really quick in the home, that's $20 or $40 probably right there. If you add in bags of chips that are $4.99, $6.99, depending on where you're living, a couple bags of chips, there's another $20 or $40 right there, just on 2 different items at the grocery store. You need to be making food at home. The average millionaire only spends $200 a month on eating out. So the question is that with rising inflation, are you spending more than the average millionaire by going and eating outside? Are you cooking at home? Are you cooking for cheap? For example, I basically eat every day, and it's not a joke. I pretty much eat just turkey and rice. I obviously have a protein shake and try to get my vitamins in different ways, but I don't go out and spend a ton of money on junk food. I do every now and then, but again, I also work multiple jobs outside and I don't have any debt. And I do that strategically because I follow Dave Ramsey very specifically and to a T. That's why I was going off about, well, what is her percent of mortgage of her income or her take-home pay? Is it 25%? Is it lower? Are you doing a 30-year fixed rate? Or are you doing the 15-year fixed rate of what you should be doing? So there's a lot of individual questions that should be asked here that honestly just don't make sense to me as I'm listening. And there's a saying that we always used in accounting, and forgive me because I'm about to cuss here, but there's a saying of, if it smells like shit, usually it is shit. And I can't emphasize this enough. I'm not putting all the blame on this person. I know nothing about their finances, but generally, generally, when we hear certain things that don't make sense to us, a lot of the times it is not the economy. A lot of the times it's the decision making that somebody did that put them in this position. And that could be just going from, hey, you didn't make the wise decision on the university you went to. Your rate of return is just not there. You chose to pay 6 figures to go to university for lesbian dance theater or underwater basket weaving, meaning that you paid more than what you're getting out of the university for going into the career that you're going into. Or you took out a student loan that you should have never taken out. A loan should never exceed your first year salary of your career that you're going to be getting out of college. Meaning, if you're going to make $60,000 starting out of college, your student loan should not exceed $60,000. But people don't listen to that advice because they'd rather go to a 4-year university for a comms major that's not going to pay them any money, but they paid $200,000, $300,000 to go party with their friends. Again, that is a personal decision that somebody made. I know people don't like to hear it because it's not fun to sit there and take your actions and have personal responsibility, but that's what it is. And by the way, there's only been 2 surveys done on millionaires, 10,000 millionaires, and they found that the number one characteristic of millionaires is personal responsibility. I think it was somewhere upwards of 97% of millionaires took personal responsibility and didn't blame others for their current situation that they're in. But it's so easy to blame Joe Biden. It's so easy to blame Donald Trump, Xi Jinping, Putin, whoever else is out there in the ether, than it is to blame oneself for where they're at financially. And again, I know this is a harsh video and a harsh reality, but sometimes we need that to wake up and say, hey, maybe I should reevaluate my finances. Maybe I should reevaluate where I'm at right now and then correct course so that we could do better. And maybe that gap is really small. Maybe it's going out and doing a side gig. Maybe it's going out like this family member's doing here of cleaning a warehouse or doing whatever it is, or even starting an Etsy shop, starting a small hobby of your own and making a little extra side cash. That way you can make up that difference of the rising cost of goods and services here in America. But I'm always curious to hear what you guys think about this. I might sound a little cold-hearted, and it's not my intention. My intention is to bring awareness to how we're spending individually, especially as conservatives and Republicans, because if we're fiscal conservative, not only do we have to be fiscal conservatives on a governmental level, but we also need to be fiscal conservatives on an individual level. And if you can do that on an individual level, then it will make sense with everybody else's situation, as well as a governmental situation, on how we're spending things of which we shouldn't. So there's a lot more I can add into this video. If you guys want me to provide more statistics, if you want me to provide more personal finance on Sunday episodes, let me know in the comment section below. Again, I do teach personal finance. I was a public accountant prior to my career switch into teaching. That does not mean I know everything, you guys. I far from know everything or even a lot of things, but I do know personal finance pretty well. If I can answer any of your questions or give coaching or advice, just let me know. I'm more than happy to create those types of videos. And with that being said, hit that like and subscribe button. Leave us a comment down below. Share this with your friends and family all over social media. And folks, I'll see you tomorrow here on The Bull Brad Show.